way we teach the squat, the press, we use a lot of body movement.
Okay.
We're going to use a horizontal hip movement with locked knees to generate a little bounce out of the bottom. And what it'll look like is this. See that? Gotcha. In other words, I'm going to lock my knees and I'm going to squeeze my abs. I'm not going to bend the back. The hip joint is where the movement occurs. So you're going to push into the hip joint and you're going to rebound off of this tightness. This is like a drawn bow. All right, you just rebound there. And what happens is, if you've got the bar in the right place and your elbows in the right place and your armpit, your tricep and your lat are tight, squeeze my hand right there. This position is the platform that generates this bounce.
Okay.
So hips go forward, and they bounce off the front. So it's here. Every time there's a bounce. Now look what the bar is going to do in your hand. It's going to go down and up. The bounce is here. Must be complete.
Okay.
Bounce.
Okay.
This is a layback press. We're talking about an actual dynamic movement. Just like that. Keep it close to your nose. Here's how you take a grip. All right. Most people come to the bar and they place their knuckles parallel to the bar because that seems symmetrical, right? But if you do that, what happens is, see where the bar is in my hand? It's back toward my fingers, okay? And look at all the leverage on my wrist there. In other words, I don't want any leverage on my wrist. I want the barbell sitting on the bones of my forearm. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to come to the bar. I'm going to select the correct grip width, which is narrow, because I want my hand as close to my shoulder as I can get it. And then I'm going to do this. I'm going to rotate my forearm into pronation. And I'm going to place the barbell right here, kind of parallel to my lifeline between the two eminences of my palm. And I'm just going to lay my fingers on top of the bar because I'm not holding the bar in my fingers like I do with the deadlift, because the barbell in a press is in compression in the hand, not in tension hanging from the fingers. So I'm going to take this position, just like this. I'm going to lay my fingers on the bar, and now look where the bar is.
Okay.
Just directly over those bones. And we have solid force transmission between elbow and barbell. That's the grip, just like that side right there, okay? That ought to feel like just a solid connection right there, okay? Now, widen your stance. Good. Elbows just in front of the bar. Big, good. Eyeballs stay fixed on the wall right there. Big air. Every time. Get in the habit of taking a bigger breath.
Okay.
Big, big breath. Good? Knees are tight. Good. That's the movement. Drag it. There you go. Finish with a shrug every time. That's it. That's how it's done. This is my old friend Tommy Suggs. See that position he's in?
Yeah. Wow.
He's presenting his chest to the ceiling. Okay? That's what you want to do. You want to take a wide stance. Ready to press. Well, that probably sounded real good, didn't it? Good. Elbows up, chest up, nice and high. Good. Big, big air. That's much better. Big breath. Good. You ever thought about why you can bench press more than you can press?
You're laying on your back.
You're laying on your back, and you have reduced the length of the kinetic chain of the exercise. Kinetic chain of a press is hands to the floor, right? Now, a cursory examination of that might lead you to believe that you could press more because there's more muscle mass involved in the exercise. And that is true. There's a lot more muscle mass, and it's a longer range of motion because most people, when they bench, pull their chest up real high and shorten the distance the bar has to travel. But every time you add a joint to the kinetic chain from the floor to the hands, you have added knees, hips, the whole back, and the shoulders. Every one of those places is a place to potentially leak power. Bench press is 2 joints, shoulders and elbows. That's all that's involved in it, in the kinetic chain. Now the rest of the body's involved, but it's not moving the bar. In the press, all of this is involved in moving the bar. So when we have you put your belt on for the press, that just recognizes the fact that all of this must be tight. Everything to the floor, because everything that's loose is a potential place to leak the power in the movement. Good. Elbows up in front of the bar. Big air. Good. Close to your nose. Keep the bar close. Good. Among the stupid things that quasi-professional health people say is that presses are bad for the shoulders, right? They cause something called impingement, don't they?
That's what I hear.
That's what you hear. It's what everybody hears. The problem is that's physically, anatomically impossible. It's another example of the conventional wisdom being 180 degrees the opposite of what actually is the case. And here's why. This is the scapula, okay? Lateral aspect, medial aspect. This is the posterior. This is the anterior. And if I lay this scapula on Brett, here it is, okay? Now, raise your arm up into a press and look what the scapula does. Go. It rotates, doesn't it? The scapula moves. It's not nailed down to the ribs. In fact, in humans, the scapula is actually attached to the rest of the skeleton only at the clavicle. In many animals, it's not attached at all. Like your dog does not have an attached scapula. It just floats. One of the things about this floating is that it can accommodate many, many different positions. Here, this little cup right here is where the head of the humerus rests. This is the socket of the ball and socket joint. And if you'll notice, there are 2 little bony protuberances right over the top. This is the acromion process. This is the coracoid process. And they make a little shelf over which the head of the humerus rests inside this structure. Now, if this happened, that would be impingement. You would squish the structures that lie between the head of the humerus and this arch of bone over the top. Those structures are the rotator cuff tendons, the supraspinatus and infraspinatus tendons, and there's a little bursa up in here as well, okay? You would mash those, but look what happens in a press. Here we are. Note that the scapula starts off in this position, and as Brett presses up, the scapula rotates up. Now, shrug. You see the scapula move up? It finishes an internal, medial, superior rotation, thus pulling, look at this, it pulls these bony landmarks away from the head of the humerus, so that when you finish a press with a shrug and point your scapula in this direction, these 2 bony knobs are pulled away from the head of the humerus. It cannot impinge. Now let me show you what impingement actually feels like. Hold your arms here in 90 degrees of abduction with your arms in internal rotation. Now, without shrugging the shoulders, just lift the elbows. Feel that? Mm-hmm. That's shoulder impingement. Does that look like a press or a bench press?
No.
Bench press has the potential to do that. That's why we bench down here.
Okay.
Okay, to unimpinge. But now, from this position of impingement, externally rotate and shrug on up. Now shrug, you feel that at all?
Yeah.
That's because the press at the top, because of the shrug, does not impinge the shoulder joint. It cannot impinge the shoulder joint. It is anatomically impossible to impinge the shoulder joint in that proper shrug position at the top of the press. Also, if you will look at the anatomy of the scapula, this bony ridge is the spine of the scapula. This position is where the trap fibers, the fibers of the trapezius, attach. Okay? So in this position at the top of the press, traps are attached here. Arm bone, humerus, comes out of here vertically, forearms on top of that, bars on top of that. Traps are attached here. So traps support the scapula in the press, and therefore the traps hold up the bar in the scapula. And when we tell you to shrug at the top of the press, we are just reinforcing the function, the anatomical function of the trap at the top of the press. And that's why you shrug. That's why you shrug. You unimpinge when you shrug, and you support the barbell when you shrug. So always finish the press with a shrug.
Okay.